do not, under any circumstances, duplicate your information, except when you need to. For the longest time, I've been saying it, only write things down in one place, but realistically, that's not how I do it. In my productivity system, I use both digital and paper planning methods, which means a lot of my plans, notes, and tasks are duplicated across two different systems. But I've realized this is actually what is helping me be so productive. I plan twice and do once. In this video, I want to show you how writing down your plans more than once can actually help you be more productive. And I want to give you two of my tried and true methods for duplicating to success. So there are two major ways that I find planning twice and doing once really helps me. So version 1 is planning very messily on paper and then duplicating it into a digital or more permanent system. I use a digital system to duplicate my information to create a more permanent home for it, but you might use a archive binder as a paper solution or some other sort of like archive planner that happens on paper. But for the purposes of this video, planning messily on paper and then duplicating it into a digital system is version 1. So in this method, you want to use paper to give yourself permission to be really messy, to scratch things out, mess things up, cross things out. See this as a first draft. Writing things out on paper actually does have a lot of benefits. I made a whole video about it. I will leave that linked up in the cards. But the main thing is that when we are creating letters, so when we are writing the like A, B, C, doing this like motion with our hand where we're following the curves of the letter, this activates our whole brain. The act of writing, of creating letters and words, activates your motor skills, your creative brain, your long-term and short-term memory. So writing things out is a really fun, full brain creative act that can help you process and cement what you're working on. So you draft on paper first, you plan it all out on paper first, and then when you're done, you have a mostly fully functional plan that you can put into a more long-term system. But here's what separates this out from, oh, just think of this as a first draft. The reason I'm calling this plan twice, do once is because the sheer act of planning on paper first and then translating it from one context to another context, to that digital or other long-term solution that I was talking about earlier, the sheer act of translating it from one context to another helps you reformat it in your brain and get you a better understanding of what you're actually working with. So obviously, I just mentioned writing. I love writing on paper as that first act for planning because it really helps your whole brain participate in the activity. But that act of translating it from one system to another system also is going to help your brain work around the kinks in the problem, smooth out the ripples in the plan, basically just make something nice and stable for yourself in whatever your long-term solution is. So 2 examples. This page that I have been on is one example, and this is what I'm calling the creative project example. So creative projects are really, really good for this method. This is the first draft of the script that I am literally reading right now. What ends up happening for me is I create an on-paper draft of the script, just writing down every single thing I can think of. Sometimes that includes thumbnail ideas, sometimes that includes title ideas, concepts, sometimes directly like things that I want to say are on here. You can see that I'm pretty wild. There's sketches everywhere. There's like random arrows pointing one way or the other. And then what I do is I translate this into a Google Doc and make it more formal and structured. I have sections for where the hook is, what the title and thumbnail concepts are, the intro, the outline. I have a bulleted list of often my favorite talking points that I definitely want to hit. So it gets pretty detailed and it gets pretty long form, and it's definitely a different format than what you see here, but it is really my preferred way to do creative projects because then I get that handwriting on paper and also translating it to a different system, wrapping my brain around it more fully. The other way I like to do this is with goals and plans. So we're going to be focusing on just this half of the page for now. This is just like my to-do lists and regular ramblings, but you can see right here I have a loose timeline set out. So when I create goals or plans, I really like to sketch out a loose timeline on paper and then put that into a digital system like a to-do list manager or calendar to make that timeline a reality. So for example, I just got promoted and I needed to come up with a transition plan for moving out of my old role and into my new one. So I created a whole timeline on paper. This is like loosely all of August, and it's just a very loose structure of the main things I need to be hitting by week 1, week 2, week 3, and then week 4 is still yet to be determined because I'm not quite there yet. But once I have a loose idea of where this is going, I will then put it into my longer term long-term planning apps. So for example, in this one, I put it into my current digital planning system of choice, which is AccuFlow. I'm gonna go over to the screen view right now to show you guys how that works. So another example of this is when I create goals and plans. I really like to sketch them out on paper first, and then I put them into a more permanent task management system so that I can really get detailed and schedule everything out. For example, I just got promoted and I needed to come up with a transition plan to go from my old job to my new job. And I have a loose timeline of it sketched out on paper, but I really want to get these things that I have for the first week into my task management system as soon as possible. So as you can see, I'm putting it all into AccuFlow, and I have this project called Transitions in AccuFlow, who is the kind sponsor of this video. Also, check them out in the description box below if you want to learn more. AccuFlow basically integrates all of your various calendars and to-do list apps and systems that you use into one convenient app that shows you your task list on the left and your calendar on the right. So I'm using this as a way to really firm up this transition plan that I sketched out on paper and put it into a digital environment. AccuFlow is really great for this sort of like timeline-based project planning because their core philosophy is that tasks should be bound to time. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to take the things I have in my transition plan. So as you can see, I started by creating a new project called Transition, and this has at least the first week's worth of tasks that I need to do that I had written down on that timeline in the project already. And this right here on the right is my first week on the job. So I need to get all these things done in the first week to help set myself up for a successful transition. And this is where the magic happens. I'm gonna go ahead and drag and drop these onto my calendar, and it's going to automatically schedule them into my day. So the first thing I need to do above anything else is I wanna schedule my one-on-ones with my directs. So I'm gonna give a nice half hour so that I can contact all my directs and get one-on-ones scheduled with them for the upcoming week. And then I'm gonna leave some time open on my calendar for that to happen. Then of course, I do have regular meetings throughout the week that I'm not doing as part of this transition plan. So to accommodate for that, I want to fit these tasks in between those meetings. So I'm gonna go ahead and put get access to work socials in below my meeting block here. I can update my title, let's say at the end of the first day. That's gonna take me like a few minutes. I'm not really worried about it. And then I wanna onboard my directs into Asana. So I'm thinking that is going to be a Monday task. I really wanna spend the first few days of this transition just getting right into the meat of it. I think that's gonna take quite a long time because our Asana is a really complicated beast, and so I wanna make sure that they are all set up in there ready to go. Another thing that I wanna do within Asana is actually start creating task templates, but I'm gonna do that in the next day. So I'm gonna put my creating task templates for Asana on Tuesday and just have those two things up in the morning. Just in case they go long, I'm gonna leave this half hour open. And then as you can see, everything I had in my week 1 transition plan is already scheduled in the first 2 days of that first week. I know a lot of stuff is gonna come up for me, so I'm leaving a lot of space open. One thing I will do is I definitely want to hold time on my calendar for when I want to meet with them and have one-on-ones with them, and I usually like to do that after lunch when we're all fed and happy. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a block here, and I'm just gonna hold for meetings, putting it in my work calendar. And then I'm gonna also do that on Thursday. And then this one, onboarding directs into Asana, I have as a task, but if I wanna push it to my calendar, I can do that by locking it to my calendar by pushing this little lock in calendar button. I'm gonna go ahead and click that. And then when I check my calendar, which is my Google Calendar that's hooked up to this. For work, it's going to appear on that calendar. So if I'm referencing AccuFlow, great. If I'm referencing the calendar app that I use for work, that's also awesome. I will definitely have that meeting time put on my calendar, even if I'm checking it off as a task in AccuFlow. If any of this seems confusing, by the way, AccuFlow also has one-on-one user onboarding, which is very helpful because you are integrating a bunch of different apps into one product. So the one-on-one user onboarding really, really helps make sure everything is smooth and where you want it to be so that you can hit the ground running using AccuFlow like a pro. And actually, I'm also noticing that these two create task templates are pretty similar. So I'm going to actually move them off of my calendar, and instead of scheduling them as two separate blocks, I'm gonna go ahead and just create what's called a time slot. So I'm gonna build a time slot from 9:30 to 11, click on slot, and then I wanna title it task template creation. And here I can just add new tasks. So I can create task template for social post, or I can also just drag and drop a task in there and then it automatically appears as well. So then I have this slot that's basically just sort of encompasses a number of different tasks that are all related to the same general thing that I'm working on, which is template creation. And this is looking pretty good. I have lots of extra space in my calendar to get all of the things that will inevitably come up in my first week done, and I'm onboarding really fast, really hitting the ground running. Having it all in this digital environment means that I can reference it whenever I need to. I can easily move stuff around if I need to move things around, but I'm still using that sort of mental model of the timeline that I had out on paper to make sure I get everything done. And Acroflow is a great partner for that. So if you want to learn more about them, check them out in the description box below. There's literally an earthquake while I'm filming right now. Living in California is so fun. So the second way that I like to plan twice and do once to help me be super productive is I like to take the plans that I made in a digital environment and move them offline. I'll show you this in a monthly, weekly, and daily context because depending on my need, I will do them both. But I have talked a lot about this method in other videos. Essentially, what I do is I look at my schedule and my task list, and then I just write it out on a blank monthly spread or weekly spread in my planner. And like I said, I do this on an as needed basis. So my months are deeply not consistent. You can see June is blank and then it's August now and I haven't done August yet. But for July, I was feeling really, really scattered and I had a lot of travel coming up and a lot of events coming up. So I just needed to sketch out the whole month on paper, which I did by referencing the digital calendar that I keep in Acroflow and then just handwriting out the big events on this monthly spread so that I could see them coming and just get that muscle memory of how my month was taking shape. It's the same thing with my weeks. This is an example of a week that I did where I just needed to sort of visualize all, especially the after work and weekend stuff that I was gonna get done. But it's on a very as needed basis. I didn't do it for this week. I did it for this week. I didn't do it for this week. So it just depends on how I'm feeling. But the reason I do this is because sometimes you need to plan things out in a digital environment because things like calendar appointments or to-do lists or notes are often things we have to share with other people. Like all of these calendar appointments are appointments in my work calendar that were moving and shifting constantly throughout the month. And then I get to the beginning of the week and I'm like, okay, all of that was moving around on the calendar app. It's basically soup in my brain right now. I need to put it down on paper so that I actually know what's coming up when. And again, handwriting it out helps activate all the centers in my brain that make me understand and sort of like help me cement in my mind what's coming up when. So first, this is planned out in a digital environment and then it is put into paper so that I have it in an offline context. I especially like this for daily to-do lists. So this is a typical page in my notebook. You can see on the left-hand column, I have tasks and events written out. And then on the right-hand column, I just have like loose notes of things that I'm thinking of or ideas that I've had or content I'm consuming if I want to take a note on that. But the left-hand column is what we're going to be focusing on for this video. So all of these events that you see here and tasks that you see here are essentially things that were already planned out in my calendar or in a digital task manager, especially for work. I share all my tasks with my team. So it's all planned out and accessible to everyone who needs to access it on my team. But when I actually want to be productive, I need to come out of the task manager. I need to write it down and remove it from the distracting environment that is a phone or a computer. So it's very relaxing to be able to just write a few priorities for a given day and not be bombarded with everything else I've ever had to do in my life in my task manager or at risk of opening Instagram or YouTube or some other distracting app. So it's super relaxing and super comforting to be able to plan it in that environment and then replan it in this environment. And this is how I actually get things done. I actually come in here and I'm actually able to say like, okay, I did that, cross it off. I did that, cross it off. And once I'm done with things here, so if I cross something off in my planner, then I can go back to my digital system and I check it off at the end of the day. So that way I'm not constantly in a digital environment. I have some breaks with the paper planning. If you are using any duplication method, the most important thing is that you have a strong close the loop system. For example, at the end of a day, if I don't get XYZ task done, I need to be able to address that immediately in every place I have it written down or typed out. Sometimes that's manually rewriting something in my planner or rescheduling it with AccuFlow. Either way, I need to make sure I have good habits around closing my open loops. Because at the end of the day, it's not writing things down twice that makes us feel discombobulated. It's having open loops and inconsistencies in our various systems that makes us feel like we never quite accomplished what we wanted to get done. So what do you think? Is this too much upkeep, or does it actually help you get clear on your plans? I would love to know. Let me know down in the comments below. If you want to keep hanging out with me, I will leave a video right here on the screen next to my head about how handwriting can actually improve your productivity. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here, for being subscribed, for being awesome. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.